there, it's Kevin with RogueDeckBuilder.com here with this week's episode of the Market Monday. This week I am going to be talking about, or actually addressing, some of the chatter that I've been hearing on the kind of the finance sites, as well as even in my own YouTube Market Monday videos about how finance is dead, at least as buying singles and selling singles is concerned, because of just the mass amount of reprints that have been happening over the last few years from Wizards of the Coast. And I would like to make a counter argument to that and say that investing isn't dead. I think we all look back kind of with rose-colored goggles during when Modern was announced, and then after Modern was announced, just the kind of rush of people trying to grab cards for Modern decks and just the entire format taking off, causing these insane price increases. It was kind of twofold things that was happening during Modern. We had record-breaking numbers of people entering the game during Standard, and we also had a brand new format that required cards that were previously not really playable because they had either rotated out of Standard, Extended was pretty much dead, and weren't quite playable in Legacy, and now all of a sudden they're powerhouses in Modern, and that created a buying spree to the likes that we saw cards just triple, quadruple, even higher than that. People remember the fetch lands from Zendikar just going from like $8 cards to $50 cards, for example, and just the amount of money people made in the finance world with Magic Gathering. Now, people claim that it's got a lot more tough to actually predict and invest in cards and make a profit in Magic the Gathering. And again, this video is trying to refute that. The trends still exist. I think they've been clearer than ever, and you just have to kind of be on top of your game and look at trends. And I'm going to try just to show you my overall strategy that I take when investing in cards. So timing is everything in Magic the Finance. Are we ever going to have another Modern where a new format comes in and then people need to invest in cards? I actually think that that's not too much of a stretch in the future. People have pointed out that there's actually more time from when the existence of Legacy was created to when now, since Modern has been a format, there's been more time since Modern has been a format to now than there was when Legacy was created to the creation of Modern. So I think that we're due for a new format. Another thing is that people didn't really anticipate the Commander, how Commander took off. And almost every Commander staple that has not been reprinted has doubled in value. A lot of them have even tripled in value since this Oath the Gatewatch. So something happened here with Oath the Gatewatch. CDC is kind of a bad example because zombies were printed, and so this just ended up in a lot of zombie Commander-based decks. And there was a lot of cards that I kept looking at to try to show trends. A lot of them had to do with zombies. We've had two zombie sets that, of course, have spiked the cards that have anything that do with zombies, but that is a clear trend, by the way. Whenever there is going to be a set that has a big theme, cards will spike up in value. We saw that with dinosaurs, we saw that with pirates, we saw that with all the Commander decks that were reprinted, or the themes that were reprinted in Commander decks, like the vampires. We might see a little bit of an upswing in Merfolk or Goblins due to the dual decks coming out, and I don't think that is the likely scenario. But in this video, I'm just going to talk about kind of my strategy. So Commander is still really, really hot. We've seen a lot of reserve list cards, especially anything that is even remotely playable in Commander for reserve list, go up in value in the past couple of years. I would even like to argue that this price increase for the Commander and / reserve list is actually greater than kind of the Modern hype. The thing about Modern, it was very easy to predict. Once the metagame started to be solved, the cards that were involved in that, like the Tarmogoyfs, like the fetch lands, of course skyrocketed. And so it was kind of a duh situation for any investor. You knew that if you're going to sink some money into those, that you'd get a return on investment. However, I think a lot of people got burned because they held on to things for too long. Tarmogoyf's a good example. It has been reprinted 3 times now, and it is still falling to this day. And so I kind of like to go a different route that most financiers are not going, and kind of go under the radar. And that's why I like the low end, the low value cards after they've rotated. Sidisi is a perfect example of this. When it was a 1.3 is what it flat, its lowest price is after it basically rotated out of Standard, and then it has increased all the way to 4.8 in just a short period. I mean, that is a year and a half that it is gone from one, so it's what, tripled in price since then. And these are the type of cards I like to kind of invest in. I also like to do kind of a scatter shot. If you ever go over to my CardSphere profile, you can see that I am targeting a ton of cards. And there's a lot of the things I'll be talking about in the Rogue Market series. There's a lot of metrics that I look at to try to justify which cards I start buying or start picking up. And one thing also is timing is everything when you buy cards. Always try to buy cards when people don't want them. The standard players don't want them, the casual players. I like to rinse and repeat with casual players. You can also see this, again, I'm showing Sidisi, which has a lot of variables, but it tends to be, and you can check this yourself, that a lot of the casual cards go up in value from January to about July or August, and then they flatline out or go down in value, and then it rinses and repeats again around the January to July, and then flatlines out. And I think we have to do that with standard burnout. Has a lot to do with even me as a player, where I will start out really liking standard and then get bored of it and go back to modern or commander, and then it takes, you know, it takes till rotation for me to get interested again in standard. And following the Pro Tours, of course, there are trends on the Pro Tours which you sell. For example, I'll be talking about later on this video that now is the time, not quite now, but November 5th-ish, November 5th through 10th will be the time to get rid of all Kaladesh through Hour of Devastation cards, as there just won't be enough time for between then and September for those cards to accrue value before they rotate out of standard. So everything has, the timing is everything in Magic the Gathering Finance. So anyway, this is a lot to swallow here with this video. There's a lot of, I'll just probably be rambling here because it's one of these videos I didn't have a script, but I just want to talk about a topic, just my overall insight on how I invest. So Sidisi is one that I did start throwing money into. I wasn't as successful as I thought I'd be. I thought I had more time with Sidisi. But right now, for example, Cyclonic Rift is a card I've been targeting. The site that is just pure gold, I've talked about this in the past, is EDH Rec, because it is kind of like your modern or standard Pro Tour analysis. This over here, there's a lot of great tools, one being sets. You can go over here to sets, and you can look at cards that are seeing the most play in Commander out of their sets. Now, I believe that EDH Rec uses Deckbox, it uses Tapped Out, and it uses a few other sources to compile these lists of decks. And so very, very popular in the Magic the Gathering internet community, which of course transcends into play groups, which then play groups have their own little, what I like to call inbred feel to them. Like one card can be very, very popular in a play group, and it eventually bleeds out of that playgroup into other playgroups, and then a trend begins to occur online, and vice versa. Online can then add people that maybe only a few people check deck box out of the playgroup, but one of them does, and they start playing a card, and then everyone in that playgroup wants a card, and voila, you have a trend going up in cards. So it's always good to really look at the sets and see which ones are the most popular. So of course this Unclaimed Territory is being used in the most, and the Vanquisher's Banner is the second most. A lot of these have a lot to do with theme. Is very, very big in Commander. We just had a Commander set release that was all about themes, and now we just had a set that the popular Commanders now that are being built have a theme based around them. So of course these are going to go in it's going to take a while for these to settle out for the real gems of cards that are being used. But where I really like this one with current sets is actually Commander cards I start to target right now, because during their draft season, they're the lowest that they're ever going to be. The Commander cards are kind of immune to the rotation. The cards that get hit with rotation are cards that see even a minuscule amount of play in Standard, and then when they rotate, they get murdered as the constructed players get rid of them, and there's not enough demand from the casual or the Commander players to really stop the free fall from rotating cards, and it takes a while for the demand to outstretch the supply of those and to go back up. I usually give about a 2-year window for that. You have at least 6 months after rotation to pick up those cards that are seen both in Commander and Standard before they'll finally see their bottom and then start to go up in value. Cards like Anointed Procession, for example, is very, very heavily played. Let's just check that one right now. Let's go over to the Amonkhet. It's a very, very heavily played, in fact, the #1 played card out of Amonkhet in Commander right now. But one of the reasons why it has such a high price tag is it's seeing play in both Commander and in Casual. The Commander demand was about $5, so the constructed demand is increasing that a little over twice, as it is a very, very popular card in Abzan tokens. But once rotation does occur, Anointed Processions will go down, and you have about a 6-month time period to invest in that card before it goes back up. But where the hidden gems are is the cards that are seeing absolutely no play, constructed play, but are still see a lot of Commander play, and they're already at their bottom because that is the draft trash. That is the people, the constructed players, the drafters that open them up. They have no use for them. They sell them back. They get rid of them. And those are the cards that are at their bottom currently. So again, timing is everything with specific cards. Some cards are not investable with them. There is not just one size fits all with investing in Magic cards. So for example, from Amonkhet, the card I have been targeting on the low buy list is the Vizier of the Menagerie. This card is a card that I can find people to sell to me for $1 to $1.50 all day long, and I feel comfortable paying that because I think it's going to go in a lot of decks going forward. It's a 4 mana for 3/4. You can spend any mana to cast creature spells, and you can cast the top card of the library as long as it's a creature. So it's going to be a very, very popular card in a ton of Commander decks going forward. So getting in a low price point at $1.50 for a Mythic does seem like a very, very worthwhile thing, even though this isn't going to start accrue valuing for quite a while. But I do think it's going to start to get those small penny increases here on out, because I think that the bottom is actually probably in the past. People are not drafting or opening sealed. There's still a few packs of people searching for Hazarets or whatnot that these will enter the field or enter the market. But other than that, it's not being drafted in quantities that it used to be. So there's nowhere to go but for this card to go up, and it is what I call rotation proof. The Cascading Cataracts is another like penny or bulk rare that were 10-cent rare that I like to target, because I think that this is going to be a popular card going forward in Commander, as any fixer in Commander is highly sought after. So again, there's 2 different strategies for different cards. I even like to invest in Modern, or even a format going forward. Maybe there will be a Frontier or an Ixalan forward, or some sort of set that Wizards comes up with next, because Modern is getting very, very defined. And it's very, very hard for new cards to actually impact Modern, and eventually they're going to need that kind of gateway from Standard into Eternal format that is affordable and where people can use cards they're familiar with, the same thing that made Modern incredibly popular. That's why I was a big proponent for the Frontier format. Unfortunately, it never did take off. It does need Wizard support, but if that ever does happen, I like to always, after rotation, just slightly spec into some bottomed out cards that have the power level there for an extended type format, but not quite there for Modern. You never know as well when a Commander deck might pick them up. So that is, of course, timing with these. There are different times, and that's what I like about Magic Finance is there's absolutely the right time and the wrong times to invest in things, and that will make or break a financier, whatever you want to call the slang for a person that investor. Hey, how about that? Will make or break them with the success of offloading cards. All right, so speaking of which, there is a lot. I think Hour Devastation has some hidden gems in it through cards like the Tournament of Hailfire. Wow, actually, this card's actually going for about half this value. It seems like the Card Kingdom has already jacked the price up of it. But between Mirage Mirror and Tournament of Hailfire, they are being played in a ton of decks. And I think the bottom for these is done. Hour of Revelation is another card I've been keeping my eye on, just because I think that it might be a matter of time before white Commander decks actually adopt this as their go-to board wipe, because it's very, very undercosted in multiplayer format. They're easy to get 10 or more non-land permanents on the battlefield for this to cast very cheaply. So anyway, that's kind of my Commander strategy while investing in cards. And again, timing is everything. Right now, I've been picking up Commander cards like crazy from the people playing the new Standard, and pretty soon. And you can get them at a discount because everyone's trying to pick up they're trying to find money to pick up their Scarab Godge and their Hostage Takers and all these new cards that have come out that have just jacked up in price after rotation, that they're willing to give up these kind of Commander staples. And then I'll rinse and repeat that sell all of the Commander players a bunch of cards when the supply dwindles for those back at a higher price. And it's all about timing. All right, so the other topic I want to talk about this is what I kind of like to call the pseudo reserve list, because there is a bunch of cards that I think you should go and check your collections if you haven't checked them for a while, and you'd be surprised. I was surprised at a lot of these legacy cards that have gone up quite a bit of value within the past year, and the trend is looking pretty good for 2018, having a really high increase of these type of cards. And so what I like to go over here, like, let's just pick one over at MTG Goldfish. We're going to go price list and legacy and pick a set. Let's just pick Scourge here and see if we can find a card that I'm talking about that used to be as bulk gets. Here's one here. Let's check out Lethal Vapors. Lethal Vapors was about as bulk as it came. About 50-cent card. Stagnant forever. So July 2011. So when Goldfish started keeping track of prices, it's been stagnant, and lo and behold, right about the Oath of the Gatewatch time, this card has doubled in value, and it is a card that probably doesn't see a great amount of play in Commander, but sees enough to 1,000 sees enough for the supply to outstretch the demand. These what I really like about bulk cards like this is these have less supply out there than their playable counterparts from the set. The problem with the card like let's go back to Scourge. Problem with the card like the Sliver Overlord or the Stifle, one being Stifle got a reprint, but like the Silver Overlord, is no one threw these in bulk boxes. These never rotted away, they never got damaged, they never got just thrown away because they had no value. And they were put in pages or in sleeves or in cases and Commander decks and things like that. And so if you check Sliver Overlord, kind of the opposite has happened with Sliver Overlord. It has gone down in value since these M15 slivers and kind of stabilized out. We might start to see this card. It's still going down. But the supply, I would say, of Silver Overlord, there are probably twice as many copies in existence as the Lethal Vapors, just based upon the fact that this card was cared for and this card was not. And so these are also cards that I am watching very closely, trying to pick up anything that has any sort of Commander playable. So the ones that do have the 500 to 1,000 EDH rec on EDH rec listings, these are cards that I think are great investments for 2018 to probably have a double up. You can even see like cards like Corona the False God have increased in value doubled up since the Oath of the Gatewatch. And so I think that there's a gold mine here that is really untapped. The problem with these cards, and this is kind of the what I've heard from a lot of different people, is these are cards that are hard to offload. Whereas Modern, that was so good about Modern, is you could invest in a card. I made a killing off of Inkmoth Nexus, for example. You could invest in a card like Inkmoth Nexus, and when the Infector, the Affinity deck won the Pro Tour or did very well at a Pro Tour or whatever, that was the time you could just offload all of the cards. Or if a new Commander deck comes out that has a pirate theme and you invested in a pirate, all of a sudden you can offload all of them within a short period of time. But that's where I also like to say that patience is the key to investing. One of the biggest beefs I had with a store that I was involved in before I owned my own store was they really like to keep singles moving. It almost felt like that it was the opposite. I think that you should keep sealed products should be moving as quickly as possible. If it's not selling, you blow it out and then you get the stuff that is selling. Whereas singles, you need to time perfectly, or you just need to play the waiting game. And so if you invested in a card and it hasn't sold, and even though you bought it for 50 cents and it's selling for $1, but you can't get your copy to sell, you don't just panic there and sell it. You wait and you wait and you wait and you put it up for slightly more. Like if you look at the way that I've kind of set up a lot of our TCG and other sales, is I've put it up for a lot higher than like page 4 on TCG Players, where you'll find most of my listings, and we still sell a ton of cards just because everyone gets stuck at that. I used to do this strategy on a site called Card Shark clear back in the day when I was just a player, as well as it was kind of my strategy on World of Warcraft when I used to be the auction house king for my server. I like to tell the story that I probably fed a Chinese family months with my account. I cold turkeyed World of Warcraft, so I didn't care about what was in my account, but I want to say I had about between $8,000 to $10,000 worth of gold alone on my account that I could have sold on the secondary market. And it was all through strategies of playing the waiting game, because everyone goes in this kind of undercutting war on even sites like TC Player. So someone will list a card at 55 cents, so another person will list it at 54. Oh, I want to be the lowest, so I'll list it at 53, and nothing's selling at that moment, and pretty soon they've caused their own little crash just because everyone has been undercutting everyone, and eventually one of them sells. Even if a card is hotly sold at that point, if people are still undercutting faster than the card is being sold, it can cause that kind of crash. But the averages should start going up, and eventually you'll be able to sell your card at that double investable place. And that's another kind of strategy I like to do. Usually the card has gone up. Usually the dollar cards that I invest in, I like to sell them out at 4 or 5. That's where it really is profitable when you get past the fees. Of course, with this particular video series, I highly try to discourage people from selling online because the fees will kill you. And where you should be using kind of MTG Finance is a supplement to your hobby. So what you should be doing is trading, not really selling. So you should find those play groups to trade to, and trade or use a service like CardSphere to trade, and that way you can get the best bang for your buck, and you can help fund your hobby, and you don't have to be one of those people that just spends thousands of dollars on Magic per year. You can actually make it so it breaks even, or you're slightly paying anything. That's been kind of my strategy for quite some time. I don't think I've really paid for Magic in years, just because of my investment strategies. Of course, I do own a local game stores now, so I have investing as even a bigger part of my daily routine, because I do have an outlet to sell it. And these trends are really profitable once you get good at what you're doing. So just a little bit more why I like Legacy. You can do this with basically any set. We can go back over to Legacy. Let's pick an older set here. Let's go past reserve list. So we don't want to go like the Urza's Destiny and earlier because of the reserve list cards, but you can actually pick non-reserve list cards and find similar trends that basically everything that is even slightly playable in Commander has gone through the roof. Or at least doubled up since the let's look at even Squirrel Wrangler. I bet this doesn't even see much play. Let's check it. Oath the Gatewatch, $1.10. It's $1.70 since then. So not the greatest example there, but still, that's a pretty hefty increase with the Squirrel Wrangler when you can safely say that this has been flatlined for years. So let's go back to a card that's very popular, and you can see a huge increase from the Oath the Gatewatch to the now with Rhystic Study, which is a very popular Commander-based card. Probably has over 15,000. Oh, wow, 30,000. Yeah, this is a blue staple, goes in every blue deck. And it had a ton of supply, being a common, as well as a reprint in Commander's arsenal. So I do think Rhystic Study is due for another reprinting. I mean, that's a pretty expensive common. Is it one of the most expensive post-reserve list commons? I don't know. Someone in the comment section tell me if there's one that's more. I'm sure we can find this trajectory kind of with the Cabal Coffers from Torment. If we go back to Oath the Gatewatch, yep, that's where we start to see the major spike. So it's doubled in value since then. Let's look at its counterpart, Urborg Tomb of Yawgmoth. I think this one had a similar Urborg Tomb. I think this had a similar price increase since. Oh yeah, it spiked up from Oath. This was because of the Eldrazi Winter before it was banned. It was banned and then it settled back down. So you can actually say that since, but it would have followed this trajectory because without the banning, it would have followed this trajectory here from 7 to over 20. So yeah, this has been a real winner of a year. Our real winner of since Oath of Gatewatch for Commander and Casual, and there's got to be some gems that we can find in these old sets, even like cards like Spore Frog. This is a card that surprised me because I needed one for a deck. I'm like, no way, it's this expensive? Because I still remember prices. I started my local game store here. is where I started my local game store when we first started inventorying and getting familiar with what cards we had and the price of it. And so these cards like this, I never even thought, I never gave it a second look. And now you can see since Oath of Gatewatch has gone from $2 to $1.50, there's no reason for me to believe that this price trend will not increase. I don't think the popularity of Commander is going anywhere. Yes, I do think that we're going to have a resurgence of Modern and Legacy. It seems like Standard, this has been the first exciting Standard since Khans of Tarkir. The price trends are very, very similar to Khans of Tarkir. We didn't have good rotation spikes in the, I guess you could say Gideon. There's a few of them. But the Scarab God, the Fetid Pools, a lot of the Botanical Sanctum type cards, this is really, really reminiscent of the Khans of Tarkir, how we had huge rotation increases. And that can only happen with either new blood coming into format, so a lot of new players, or players coming back to formats that they haven't played previously. So Standard is looking pretty healthy for this time around, and a lot of times that translates into when they get bored of Standard again, the natural transition is from Standard into Modern and Legacy, and we'll see another price trend in those. The problem with both Legacy and Modern, and we saw this with the Iconic Masters, is it seemed like they used Iconic Masters as another excuse to print a Modern Masters set. I like to joke that Iconic Masters is Modern Masters 4. We really didn't see that coming, with a lot more Modern staples being printed than anything else. So that is one reason I don't like to invest in Modern, because of the reprint, and B, it's oversaturated with other people already investing in the format. So again, another reason why I like older cards is I don't know the proper term, because I want to say feedback loop, but I know that feedback loop does not mean what I think it means here. But this is a problem with Wizards. If you go over to sets, you can see some of these old sets. Spore Frog, for example, has not been reprinted forever, and even has been a popular card in Commander for quite some time. I actually just won a game with Spore Frog. I put it on a Nim's Death Mantle and had permanent fogs against a Skittles deck. That was pretty funny, and they had no way to get rid of it. But anyway, you can see that we have a problem in Commander with reprints. Check out all these even recent sets. Fate Reforged is the one I really want to show you. This set is awful. Wizards just must hate this set, because look at how quickly all of these cards have been reprinted. Shamanic Revelation was reprinted Commander set. Reality Shift was reprinted Commander. Crux was reprinted Commander set. Archfiend Depravity was reprinted a box set. Palace Siege Commander. Tarka Worldrunner Commander. Outpost Siege Commander. Hero's Blade Commander. Citadel Siege Commander. Frontier Siege Commander. Monastery Siege Commander. We have the Teamer Sabretooth even reprinted in a Commander. The Humble Defector in a Commander. The Kolaghan in a Commander. Commander. There are very few cards that have not seen a reprint. So they have they had no chance to even go up in value before Wizards just killed the price of them by reprinting them. And it seems like Wizards is more they're less reluctant to print cards that were recently printed in their box sets, and I think it's due to prices. I think they've got it stuck in their mind that they can't put too much value in a sealed product without the speculators buying it up and not having access to the casual players. So unfortunately, what I think that's going to happen is it's going to create just a huge supply of some of these more recently printed sets that they'll never be able to recover financially. They'll never be able to gain gains. And I've lost a ton of money on some of these specs. I was speccing into Kolaghan the Storm Fury, for example, because of how potent it was in Frontier and how good it can be in various kind of go wide strategies in the Rakdos type strategies in Commander. In fact, if we look at the Kolaghan the Storm Fury, it probably has a pretty decent showing in non-dragon. Well, I guess it is in mostly the dragon themed commanders, but I was thinking it would see more decks like in Rakdos Lord of Riots or whatnot, or any sort of swarm based strategy, as it's just a great card to dash in and kill off. I guess it would be more of a dragon theme because this is whenever a dragon attacks. But anyway, so these are the type of cards I was investing in when they're 10-cent rares, and just got killed on those investments because I did not see Wizards reprinting this that quickly. The Dragon Storm was another one. That card I just got murdered because it not only was a reprinted Commander, but it's being reprinted as an uncommon in Iconic Masters. But if you go back over to these old sets, go back over to the legacy sets, it takes a while for Cobblecoffers and Ristic Study have still not seen a reprint. And I think it's Wizards has been shying away from it just because how expensive they've become. And they don't want to just throw them in a box set for people to. And I think it should be the opposite. Wizards should avoid reprinting recently reprinted cards. I mean, they should avoid anything Return to Ravnica forward. They shouldn't be reprinting. There's just so much supply out there. It's just not anything that anybody wants. I think their box sets would sell a lot better if they would go back and find some of these cards that have just snuck up on us. And this is not the exception. This is the rule. I know Ristic Study is one of the more pricey ones, but look at Spore Frog. Let's just go look at another random set, and you can see that. Yeah, let's look at Invasions. You can see that though they've gone up since the Phyrexian Altar. This is going to be a good one. Since Oath the Gatewatch, what did it spike up here? Well, it just spiked up here. It's been going up in value. See this little dip here? This is normal. That's what I was talking about with the price trends. Casual cards are on the decline, though. They're going to be on the decline until about Christmas, until about January, just because the standard's the hot thing right now. And then you can see right here, it'll go back up in value. March, they'll start going back up in value. This is a very, very, very normal trend in Magic the Gathering Finance. But yep, since Oath the Gatewatch, boom, this is almost doubled in value. It did at one point, doubled in value. Another card that is heavily, heavily used in Commander that has not seen a reprint. Let's look at, she's Captain Sisse. This one spiked up because of the rule change, though. But even if the rule change would not have happened, well, it wasn't really increasing. It was slightly increasing. That's not a bad increase from 3 to 3.7. About 4. Yeah, 4.8, and then it went up here. Trying to figure out why it went up right here. Is this... yeah. Not quite sure. Is this when 1 versus 1 Commander was announced? Might be. I'm not sure. And then, of course, spiked way up right here with the change of Legendary Planeswalkers. Here's another Commander stable, uncommon. And we should see a huge increase in Zendikar. Or Oath the Gatewatch. Yep, $4 all the way to 11. Yeah, these are not the exception. The rule, we can come down to the dollar cards. What's Teferi's response do? Let's see. Our Mutation. Is this a Commander card? Now this one's gone down since Oath. Started going back up. Or did this get a reprint? Never mind, got a reprint. Ineligible. Do or Die. What is this thing? No reprint. This one's stagnant. Here you go, though. This might be a good one to invest in. If you can find one that's stagnant, that still has, let's look up EDH Rec to see if it has any sort of pressure. $300. That's a little low for me. You want to be at least in the $500 range. Separate all creatures target players can roll 2 face-up piles. Destroy each in 1 pile. Yeah. Player's choice. Yeah, it's just there's better things that can happen besides Do or Die. That's probably why we're not seeing the same price direction. Let's see, Undermine's had a reprint. Yeah, it's been pretty stagnant. But anyway, these have... oh, here's Sterling Grove. This is another one that's gone crazy since Zendikar, right? Yeah, so yeah, more of the Commander staples. So where do we need to be? I want to see above 500. 500 or more. Is where we want to be for real price increases. You can see something like 5,000 decks, though, has gone way up since the... not quite doubled. This was an uncommon, so there's a lot more of these in existence than other cards. All right, let's go. But let's try one more set, and let's pick Judgment. What's in Judgment here? Let's find like a $1-ish rare. What's a Nomad Mythkeeper? I guess we can just look at Judgment, the set, and see what cards are popular from Judgment, and that will give us an indication. So let's find one that hasn't been reprinted. Probably has at least over 1,000 supply. Planar Chaos is an uncommon. There's Balthor for you. I bet Balthor has followed a very similar, because I bought this where I did a deck tech for Balthor, and it was a bulk rare when I bought it, and for the deck, and that's why I used it. I was trying to build like more bulk rare type. Well, I guess it was actually $2, so it's gone up from $2.50 up to $3.50. And again, I think this will adjust its way out once the standard kind of craze goes out here. So yeah, I don't know. I think the 2018 we should still follow this. I think the post reserve list legacy rares, you can even go into modern up to Lorwyn, maybe up to Scars of Mirrodin. Well, probably not. Probably up to what is the set before? Probably up to Worldwake Zendikar is what you could easily go up to. And most casual cards that have significant play in EDH that haven't been reprinted will follow very similar. I would say another 40% increase is what I'm calling for 2018, which I don't think is that bad. I mean, you throw that in anywhere. I mean, you can't expect that from a lot of modern cards. You can't expect that, of course, from standard. And it's a good place to kind of sink your money when the other markets are stale. So again, timing. Pro Tours. You want to sell the two Pro Tours before rotation is what I like to do. So this is actually what's kind of weird. I guess I didn't elaborate on this. The reason why I'm selling out at the Pro Tour Ixalan for Hour of Devastation onto Kaladesh is the Pro Tour for Explorers of Ixalan, or excuse me, Rivals of Ixalan, is going to be modern. So we're not going to have another, I guess will the core set have one before rotation? I guess we will have another one, but we only have a year. That's the last one. Usually standard cards, let's look at Gideon, for example. I think this one's a good example of how prices for standard begin to bottom out, even though they see quite a bit of play in their respect. So Gideon maxed out here at Kaladesh, and it was still seeing tons of play here. Still tons. In fact, it went back up here because it was still seeing tons of play after Amonkhet came out. And of course it rotated here, but Gideon was still a 4 of in tons of decks, and still the free fall occurred. And when did that happen? Right after the Pro Tour of the big block being printed, or the big set, the last big set being reprinted, or the first big set being reprinted before rotation. So this was a rotation occurred. So everything from the Kaladesh block, I think, is the time to get out right after the Pro Tour of the upcoming Ixalan set. So yeah, we'll talk about trends more in detail. I've rambled a lot. We're up to 38 minutes. I like to keep this under 40 minutes, but hopefully you can use this video as a tool in your own investment portfolio, whatever you want to call it, for Magic the Gathering, to make some savvy little investments. I really, really like these older cards. I think we've finally come to the point where the demand is starting to outstretch the supply. We had a period where Magic was very, very stagnant. It had about 5 million players for a long period of time. As many players entered the game as left the game, and so there was a lot of supply for everyone. And now we've come to the point where people have considered about 20 million active players, I believe, is what Magic is at. And there's a lot of people that have an interest in picking up these older cards. I've talked about in another video. Every store has that one player that wants to use old obscure cards or just less known cards in their commander group to feel, I don't know, kind of like a hipster, whatever you want to call it, an old school person that hey, look at this cool card I use. I'm guilty of that to a point, and I think there's some gold mines in those particular sets. So I say anything at 500, anything 750, 1,000 above from post reserve list legacy sets that have not been reprinted will have very substantial increases throughout the year of 2018. This has been Kevin with Rogue Deck Builder. We will have a Rogue Market out the first one in a while, out this week, so be looking forward to that. Thanks for watching.